Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Corrupt Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1975 musical horror comedy titled The Rocky Horror Picture Show. Now, the Rocky Horror Picture Show runs for an hour and 40 minutes long. It is directed by Jim Sharman. It is produced by Michael White. The script was done by Jim Sharman and Richard O'Brien, based on the Rocky Horror Show by Richard O'Brien. The lyrics were also done by Richard O'Brien and Richard Hartley. The cinematography by Peter Susitsky. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Please forgive me. And the editing was done by Graham Clifford. And the stars of the movie are none other than Tim Curry, Susan Sarandon, Barry Bostwick, Richard O'Brien, Patricia Quinn, Nell Campbell, or better known as Little Nell, Meat Loaf, Jonathan Adams, and Charles Gray as the criminologist. So, from the looks of the DVD cover, you may think that the 1975 cult classic The Rocky Horror Picture Show can be very weird and whimsically creepy. And you would not be wrong with that analogy, because this movie is bizarre, and it is creepy, and it is whimsical, but it's also very, very energetic. I mean, it's got some really good catchy tunes if you're into musical numbers. And, even if you're not really a fan of this movie, you will be intrigued by the ongoing plot. And with the way this movie runs, it's a wonder why this movie was considered a cult classic. Um, of course, it originated in 1973 as a Broadway stage performance, which received quite a stupendous amount of accolades. And then in 1975, they decided to make it into a box office movie because the musical was just so extremely popular with the fans. They decided to make it into a theatrical movie, which unfortunately bombed. But then they had something called some kind of like a midnight showings where there would be like people, dressed up in the costumes of the characters, and they tried to emulate their dance styles. And, I think it kind of rectified the energy in not just the performers, but the audience as well. I mean, it actually brought audience anticipation and interaction, which went along with the script, which went along with the performances. So it wasn't just a performance laden uh, musical, it was also something that the audience could get themselves into as well. Because this movie is 100 minutes long, full of fun, singing, dancing, and enough fueled up energy to likely keep you awake for long hours in the night. Does this story really have anything, inspiring? Not quite. No. No, I'm not going to say it's going to, like change your outlook in life. It's not going to inspire you to really think too much outside the bun, so to speak. I guess if there is a moral passage maybe in this movie, it's about, learning to accept a person for who they are, even if they're not even if they're not like colored in the lines, so to speak. And that probably could come to the character of Dr. Frankenfurter, played by Tim Curry. He is a man of his own. He's a man of his own liking. He is a man who wants to be who he is, even if Not everybody accepts him. All right, from the narrate, I mean the but then again, when you think about, I mean, the movie, Dr. Frankenfurter, played by Curry, might be the most over the top character depicted there, and maybe the most recognizable, but he's not working alone in this movie. In fact, the entire ensemble is just as fun to watch as Tim Curry's over the top character of Dr. Frankenfurter. From the narration of an unnamed criminologist played by Charles Gray, the story centers around a normal, young, recently engaged couple named Brad Majors, played by Barry Bostwick, and Janet Weiss, played by Susan Sarandon, whose car gets burnt out in a major downpour. They're cold, they're shivering, and all they just want to do is make a phone call for a tow truck to come and take their car away, maybe just spend the night in the castle. The couple end up in the castle and are greeted by a transvestite scientist by the name of Dr. Frankenfurter, played by Tim Curry, who claims that he is an alien from the planet transsexual Transylvania. In some ways, many people say that he's in the same tradition as Dr. Victor Frankenstein, an eccentric scientist, even though I think he takes his eccentricity to a higher level. And just like Dr. Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenfurter has found the solution to create life rather than give life, which is exactly what Frankenstein did when he created his monster. After successfully bringing his creation, Rocky Horror, played by Peter Hinwood, to life, Dr. Frankenfurter shows Brad and Janet to their rooms, where he embarks on a passionate experience this young couple will remember till the day they die. Yes, they walked in on Dr. Frankenfurter's convention where they're like treated to a party of some sort, a mad party, where this mad scientist made life instead of, what normal people do, which is give life. He actually created life, just like in the same vein as Dr. Frankenstein. And so, as a part of a celebration, Brad and Janet did not anticipate of becoming part of the celebration, but it seems like they were put in a precarious situation that they just couldn't really escape from. Now, is that entirely a bad thing? No, because if they would have escaped from it, there would be no movie, right? Of course I'm right. Not to be condescending, but this is just what the movie was about. I mean, it was a simple story. Couple's car breaks down. They walk into a castle, and they have their lives turned around in an experience that they will never forget for as long as they live. With all the whimsical weirdness dominating the screens, the Rocky Horror Picture Show is the ultimate fun a movie fan can ever have, and Tim Curry is at his most zaniest he has ever been. Tim Curry has made a life out of playing whimsical, over-the-top characters. whether he's playing heroes, villains, he will always bring life to the screen in the most extreme matters. Whether he's playing an evil clown like It from Stephen King's It to The Lord of Darkness, if you remember that 1985 movie Legend, which featured a very young Tom Cruise, he really knows how to bring characters to life. And here, I think this was probably one of his most zaniest. I don't think anything could have ever topped that. Sporting full transvestite regalia, Dr. Frankenfurter takes Brad and Janet and his entire viewers to his delectably scary house of horrors while leading them on through a variety of spontaneous tunes. With his demeanor set on abrasiveness, his seductive ways goes both sides as he utilizes his persuasive charm to engage in intercourse with both Brad and Janet. He'll go both ways. I guess you could say this is one of the earliest movies where bisexuality was actually the acceptable thing and where normalcy is actually alienated. When you think about it, in this movie, normalcy is almost non existent. And it's not just Dr. Frankenfurter that's the eccentric one, too. You also have Richard O'Brien as Riff Raff, the weird butler with a funny voice. You also have Patricia Quinn as Magenta, Nell Campbell as Little Nell. I mean, these guys are what truly represents eccentricity, where the more eccentric you are, the more accepted you are. This is the story where eccentricity is more accepted than normalcy. And you will see that a lot in this movie. In some ways, Brad and Janet's normalcy just seems out of place. And that's not entirely a bad thing, because maybe we do need at least one or two normal people just to show you that normalcy is boring. It's the eccentric characters in this movie that demonstrate that the more eccentric you are, the more people will open up to you. More people would have been more interested in the antics of Dr. Frankenfurter and the rest of his other madhouse gang. Even though, hey, Barry Bostwick and Susan Sarandon, they played off their roles spectacularly to represent normalcy, but they have to realize that their normal ways of life is completely alienated when you walk into the castle of Dr. Frankenfurter and his bunch of whacked out weirdos. The house of Dr. Frankenfurter and his estate, where normality is extremely alienated. The spiritual guide it comes from his loyal butler Riff Raff, played by Richard O'Brien, who wrote the majority of the lyrics to these songs in this. He contributed a lot to this movie. And his ghoulish maid Magenta, played by Patricia Quinn. It's Dr. Frankenfurter who decides on the differences between right and wrong. And Tim Curry, he just looks like he is having the time of his life in his performance, where the boundaries to moral decency has absolutely no limits. A major idiosyncrasy that has made this film reach cult status is the rightfully selected music. The opening scene, which features a pair of lips singing science fiction double feature, it pays homage to classic science fiction movies, makes it clear that the music matches the over the top characteristics to the leading character. If I was to choose a favorite song of choice, it would have to be The Time Warp, in which Riff Raff and Magenta lead a pair of oddball characters in an upbeat dance. And if that does not have your toes tapping, you may as well just live under a fucking rock. I mean, who could forget the song Sweet Transvestite when we're first introduced to Dr. Frankenfurter? These two songs come right after one another, giving us the double pleasure that keeps our fingers snapping and our toes tapping. Directly after its release, the Rocky Horror Picture Show launched a fan following. Fans just threw themselves into the movie as they hollered back at the screen, taking quotes from the movie, having performers decked out in costumes as the audience is watching them, like from the songs The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Ah, those were the days. It's just too bad that I was born in 1976, so I never had the chance to see those midnight viewings. C'est la vie. I mean, it would have been a ton of fun to have had the experience or something like it. But from the comfort of my humble abode, this film was truly a riot. But in front of a crowd, it would have been a lifetime that maybe, just like Brad and Janet, it could probably be an experience that I'll probably never forget. Would I say that this movie would be for everyone? No. I mean, if you're homophobic, or if you think that there's lack of moral scruples, or you're just this hardline guy or girl who seems to be heavily dependent upon scruples and rules and regulations and limitations, well then, look elsewhere. You're not going to find it here. So, with that in mind, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, it's a 10. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. Just remember, be kind, be courteous, don't be rude, and I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Corrupt Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. And let's have ourselves a time warp. Goodbye.